Tuesday,
Is it
Thursday.
Tuesday? Thursday?
Oh my gosh, seriously. So I was going to tell everybody that, I'm home with COVID, and now I just demonstrated that I have COVID brain going on right now.
I wish it was Tuesday. Boy, I'd have a lot
Oh,
more I could get done this week.
no kidding. No kidding. Well, that's way
I'm
my week's
glad to
been.
see you back among the living.
Oh, thank you. We had a great trip to New York over the weekend to visit our daughter and her husband, and had wonderful food and great experiences. And coming home, I was like, man, I'm tired. Like, maybe I had a little too much to drink last night. It was, one of our daughter's birthdays, and but hey, I was tired. I was really tired, and by the time I got home, I'm like, oh, something's not right. And here we are, tested, confirmed, on medication, and this time I'm staying out of the hospital, not
Yeah,
doing
no,
that
no,
stuff
no
again.
hospitals. No
Yeah,
hospitals. It's hard for
so
us to do a live show in the hospital.
that's right. That'd be awkward. Well,
Yeah.
hey, so we're going to talk today, and we didn't promote this, so if you show up, awesome, come join us. But and I'll throw up a banner on it here. But we want to talk about a social selling framework. I think one of the things that you and I have talked a lot about, Tom, and I've experienced over the years, you've experienced, is this whole concept of social selling is just still kind of mystical, if you will. So you've taken a really good lead on our internal conversations, doing two key things I think are so important. How are we defining social selling? And then what's the framework around this whole social environment? And notice I left off the word selling at that point. This whole social environment that leads to predictive revenue, I
Yeah.
think is so important.
Yeah. Well, again, and there's, all these terms, right? Whether we call it social selling or social whatever we want to put the label of it on. The
Right.
fact is that the way that we go about building relationships that ultimately turn into business and revenue is way different, and our old school techniques are way broken.
Right.
So what we have to do is we have to have a new way, which we all have talked about, right? I talk about it in my book. We've talked about it on here. It's like, even LeadSmart, my CRM company, right? Our entire charter is helping people do things differently so that they can succeed in this new world. And so, yeah, I think that there's the problem that we're up against, right, is the noise. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of, everyone has their own definition, which makes it very confusing. You take the word social selling and you bring that up to somebody, and they'll think like, oh, that means I'm pitch slapping. Right? I mean,
Right.
how many, it's like, or I'm going on LinkedIn to try and grab somebody to buy my stuff. Right. So there's
Right.
all these sort of ideas, concepts, opinions, all of that stuff that all has created noise. And unfortunately, that noise is getting in the way of the effectiveness and the actual focus of what needs to be done. Hence the ability to kind of push the noise aside and put down and focus on the importance, which is, as we put a framework together, that's what our objective and goal is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the whole reason I use this social selling socks is because there are so many ideas or definition. I don't even want to call them definitions, because normally it's just like a perception of something that comes to mind when you say social selling.
I think when you
And
say selling, right, it may not even be the social, it's the selling part of it that where the
well, but
connotation comes to mind.
yeah, but the challenge then is if you say social, it
Right.
immediately goes to marketing,
And social
right?
media. Yes.
In
Yes.
social media. And
Yes.
then you think of, the brain goes down social advertising, it goes
Yeah.
down organic, it goes down different paths.
Yeah.
And I think part of that challenge, and the whole reason that I saw a need is I was doing more, inbound marketing consulting work in 13, 14, 15. What I realized is that there wasn't a whole lot of sales tech that was being built around social. There still isn't. It's still around marketing, MarTech, which we know is crazy crowded, but it was all geared around the marketers. And what I never understood with that was, you know, we used to equip salespeople to go meet people and build conversations and generate rapport, and that led to sales opportunities. And then all of a sudden we got in this digital age and everything went to the marketers. And we just, at best, we would give salespeople a navigator license and maybe a half day with a LinkedIn guru.
Yeah, we dehumanized it, right? We went from
Right.
one extreme to the other, whereas, you could argue that the traditional relationship-based sales model that was, existed for many, many years was there wasn't enough creation of demand. There was too much focus on relationship and not enough creation of demand that then, that those two came together. But then we went to the other extreme and we tried to automate all of that and try to capture demand through, and we thought we were creating demand, but I don't really believe we were. We're really more capturing demand by having all these systems and technologies and everything like that. And we dehumanized it along the way. And unfortunately made the concept of selling even be more of a black eye to a lot of organizations, because they, think of selling, they think of all the pressure and I'm going to persuade you or manipulate you to do something that maybe you don't want to do,
Yeah.
So,
Hi,
yeah.
Susan.
Hey, Susan.
Susan joined us today. Socially Susan Berger. Haven't seen you on here for a while, so good to have you back.
Happy Tuesday. Sorry, Thursday.
Yeah. Well, she did spend like, I don't know, 3 months in Europe or something, so she's allowed. But yeah, we'll keep going with that, Tom.
Yeah. So anyway, I think we're coming to a point where relationship certainly matters, right? But the relationship is not just a relationship of, hey, I brought you donuts, or hey, I'm taking you to lunch, or
Right.
which is a lot of what a lot of sales prior relationships
Used
were
to
based
be.
on, right? So that relationship has got to have a value component to it. You've got to add value in that relationship. Doesn't mean they can't like you and they can't want to go hang out with you. That's totally fine if that's what the case is. But if you're not adding value, you're not moving that person towards a business transaction. And then you need to, again, combine that with truly creating demand for your product or service of what you're doing, so that the fact is there is competition, there is alternatives.
Right.
People have choices, right? Companies have choices. They can choose to buy, they can not buy, they can buy from a competitor, they can, all of that. So you have a job, and I'm not just saying as a salesperson, but as a revenue organization, sales, marketing, even client success to a degree, is all responsible for creating that demand. And if you can build that relationship and create that demand and then use it in the world that we're in, which is a hybrid world, right, of digital and, live, to me, that's where the whole framework starts to come together. But it's taking a lot of ingredients from the past. It's kind of taking the best of, the greatest hits, right? It's the ingredients from the past and putting them together in the present based on the world that we're in and how we do business and how we communicate, and the fact that we're not, everything's not all face to face. And so, yeah, that's where I think the framework of this is very important.
Yeah, and I think what's so true and that you talked about there is that it's got to be more holistic. And I've shared the story with you and others before, but we've got to blow up that sales and marketing silos. We just have to get rid of them. We need to bring them together. Whatever they call it is, now we've got CROs that are getting in place, and maybe a CRO will become a unifier of sales and marketing and get them under one umbrella and moving towards the same goals. It may not work. It may just be a name and name only. But until that happens, we can't look at demand generation holistically. We can't look at social activity holistically. And if we don't look at it holistically, we're missing out on so much potential. And in this time right now where budgets are tight and everything's challenging, there's so much competition. If we're not taking advantage of all that potential, we're wasting huge opportunities to be successful.
Well, yeah, I completely agree that the silo of sales and marketing needs to combine. I also believe, and it's interesting, Salesforce yesterday, Salesforce was the original framework of the SDR, right? The predictable revenue group book that introduced the SDR concept came from Salesforce, or came from work that had been done at Salesforce. And Salesforce announced yesterday on their earnings call that they are combining their sales organization with their client success organization into one group. They didn't mention marketing. I don't know if marketing is going to be combined or incorporated. I think they've already been trying to do that a lot because they're on the marketing side. But why would a company do that? It's powerful, right?
Yeah.
If you can put a vector between your sales, marketing, and client success, where that's a relevant part of your business, working towards the same goals, working together, working towards these common objectives, again, using sort of the social frameworks that is ultra powerful. As soon as you break them apart, right, that vector is my engineering, right, starts going off and disperse. It starts going off into different directions. You lose that power, right? You lose the force that exists with that power of having those groups come together and working together through a common objective.
Yeah.
And companies are recognizing that because it's becoming way more visible, right? That dispersal and that, hey, we're off on different directions, and the cross alignment is becoming more visible. And so companies are realizing, oh my gosh, I got to do something different. And it's also starting to become popularized a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good, Tom, because I think it's the 24-hour nature of digital has forced us to recognize that if the vector, the focus of our different teams are not consistent or on the same focus, then you can start to see your inefficiencies.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening, where you do have, like, I'll break it down practically, where it was, and Susan, who popped in here for a little bit, Susan expressed this in one of her previous roles, where she would say, look, our MarTech stack was this big. I mean, it was huge. This is all the MarTech stack. And then you looked at the sales stack and it was like this big. It was like Sales Nav, some sort of an emailing tool, and the CRM. And that was about it. And what that emphasizes is just a difference in focus than what marketing was doing. And a lot of that marketing tech is becoming obsolete with, you can't track cookies anymore. I mean, there's so many privacy laws that are coming in place that a lot of the activities and the technology that marketing teams were buying, they're just not as valuable anymore.
Well, and there are some really good marketing tech tools that could be used to not only help marketing, but to also help the sales team as well. Give them more insights, give them more visibility, give them, again, insights into places that they wouldn't normally have them, to help facilitate the conversation. Because the more relevant you can be, right? If I know something about my prospect and I know something about what they're doing, therefore I can be more relevant.
Yeah.
If I can be more relevant, I can be more valuable. If I'm more valuable, the quality of the relationship will be that much better. So it's, again, how do we work together to keep building that demand and quality of relationship?
Well, and you hit on something there that I think is really important, is that was a mindset shift that you just explained there. Like, yeah, there's great technology out there that marketing's using that could be more valuable if the mindset would shift. And what I mean is some of the technology around, and I really am going to complain COVID fog today because there's words that just can't seem to get into my brain. But technology around what customer or prospective customers might be searching for, what they might be looking at.
Intent, right? Intent data.
Intent, thank you. Yeah. Intent data, third-party intent data, has traditionally been used by marketing to go, okay, well, let's go create a bunch of content. But it doesn't get necessarily moved over into sales and say, sales, what about you creating content? Because you're on the front lines, you're probably already connected to these individuals. Here's topics for you to be talking about, sharing. Here's people in social media that are talking about this, go join them, because they're not connected well enough. Those end up becoming very different
Yes.
conversations in silos that don't get amplified to a point that are really truly that valuable to the company.
And boy, I feel like we're talking about things that each of these topics we could talk about for an hour. So I feel like we're bouncing around, but it's okay. We'll get to it. But if you arm your salespeople with content, right, relevant content, they're on the front lines, as you said. They know where the buyer is in their journey, right? And therefore, then you can, I'm a big fan of the right content at the right time, right? So if I can provide the right content and the right value at the right time, well, who has the visibility on that? The salespeople who are on the front end. Marketing people don't have that visibility per se. And if you can build that into your relationship, and again, I know you're having Carson Hetty on tomorrow from Microsoft, right? We've talked to him several times about this. That was one of the secrets of what they did, was providing the right content at the right time to the right people. And that couldn't have been done by marketing, who didn't have that frontline relationship with the account. So if I arm the salespeople, give them the ammunition and help them understand, here's how you use this content, and here's how it applies to those things, then again, I can be way more valuable and I can get way more conversations going.
Yeah. And, I think we're part of that challenge again is we try to control and automate everything. And I get it from an efficiency standpoint, right? But what happens is, and even I fell into this with the beginning stages of Yip and Funnel Amplified. It's like, okay, well, let's go create all this content and stick it into the hands of salespeople for them to share. But the challenge there is, if it's not in their voice, and that's one of the things that social has become, it's about your voice, it's about your personal brand. And because authenticity is so important in this culture now in the business world, and we see the data, I mean, the data is very, very clear. If I post something about my brochure, about my company, that's a brochure type, people ignore it.
Of course.
But if I post something, I post something like, hey, I was in a conversation with the prospect and this is what it was about and this is where it went. And then all of a sudden you get people interested and they want to be involved. So that challenge is not just sales are on the front line, let's equip them with content. I think it's more of, we got to equip them how to create their own content.
Well, I think we can equip them with content. We have to let them, just giving them content to spray and pray, that's stupid, right? That's not going to get anything done. So you have to know when and how to use the content. And then, yes, if you can then frame it or wrap it in your own voice, which is an accelerator, that's even better. But it's okay, right? You could take a piece of content that's created by marketing, post it with some of your own insights or whatever, and now it's got a little bit more personal touch to what it is that you're actually doing. You need to read my LinkedIn post this morning. My LinkedIn post this morning was talking about the difference between sales speak and advisor speak. And I've been watching really carefully on a lot of calls I've been on recently of how people tune out when they hear sales speak, right? And say anything that they perceive as salesy, it's like they hit a mute button, like on your remote control. It's like they're muting. But if you are advising and helping, and it's amazing how much engagement you'll get back and how much, I've had calls that were supposed to go an hour, go 2 hours because they wanted to stay on to get more guidance and advice, right? So all of this helps you become more of the advisor and less of the salesperson. But then as you're guiding them, of course, that's part of your job, is to create that demand and guide them. But it's a good thing to guide them to the point where they actually buy something and take the steps that they need to take to, solve the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
So
anyway. So bringing it back, I mean, what we wanted to start talking about and letting people know that Tom and I are working on building out a framework. And so this, I think, is a good conversation for other people to join in. Like, what do you think needs to be a part of it? But what we've tapped on today is mindset's a big part of it, because there's got to be a shift in thinking about how we do things, or how we're going to, we as a company, how we will communicate with prospects at any stage of their journey. Social needs to be a part of it, of course. Additional content needs to be a part of it, of course. And that, therefore, there's got to be technology, there's got to be some techniques or tactics, and there's got to be strategies that are all built into that. Are we getting closer to the framework? I mean,
No, I mean, I think you're outlining the ingredients, right? Or the categories of ingredients, if you will. Now it's a matter of how to take those ingredients and put them together so we get a delicious meal out on the other end. And I think that's what is missing. I think there's a lot of conversation about ingredients, and I think there's a lot of opinions, those ingredients get put together and they end up with a mess, a meal you don't want to eat or can't eat.
I've made some of those.
Yeah, we've all done those before. Or they're so complicated that no one says, it's like some of those cookbooks you open up, right? And it's like the recipe's so complicated that it's like, screw it. So I think those are the things so our job, or what we need to be able to do, is get the recipe in place, get the components of the recipe in place, and then make it easy for the recipe to be, or easier for the recipe to be prepared. But right. You're right, there is some mindset and some conceptual things that are going to have to be understood, right? If I'm going to do French cooking, there's some concepts that I need, some fundamentals I need to do before I start trying to go in, even if I have the best cookbook in the world. So yeah. There's just quite a bit of that. And, that's where a piece of this is what I wrote in the Revenue Zone book, is a piece of this puzzle is that, but that's not the only piece of the puzzle. And just to summarize before we end off here, this is an area I'm so passionate about, but it's in a way, it's good to see the passion is coming true. Is the current way that things are being done with sales, marketing, revenue, whatever you want to call it, is so badly broken. And the spotlight on the fact that it's being so badly broken is getting brighter and brighter every day. It's getting brighter and brighter to your customer, and it's starting to become more and more brighter to your company. And to the point of, let's face it, right? People are trying to hire good sales talent. They're trying to hire good marketing talent, all of that kind of stuff. It's going to become harder and harder to hire good talent if you don't get your act together on the business side. But it's certainly going to be harder and harder to bring in customers and generate predictable revenue if you don't get it together to help your customers. So the problem is, and the pain of that is becoming more spotlighted, more amplified every day. So, our job is to help people get there faster and be able to solve it faster. Okay, I'm done on my soapbox.
No, I mean, you know what? I think it's a good soapbox, though, Tom. I think that, you and I were chatting earlier today. I think one of the challenges I still struggle with is the analysts have been talking about this for years. This broken funnel, this B2B sales and marketing challenge and all that. And you read about it and you look at their data. And then when you start talking to teams in real life, they may indicate a little bit of the pain. But I think, number one, in business, everybody acts like nothing's broken, right? Oh, no, we're great. We're healthy. And then 2 days later, you have massive layoffs. But we've got, we're coming out of the pandemic. And now we're dealing with global inflation. There's lots of pressures. There's a ton of competition. This pain's got to be stronger. It's got to be more painful right now. And I just don't know if have we really hit the point where companies are ready to start going, okay, yes, our cold calling, our cold email, our traditional over the last 20 years, B2B sales, marketing, lead generation, demand generation, whatever terms we want to use for that, revenue generation is broken, and we're ready to make a big shift. Because I think that's the time we're in, without sounding like an alarmist, although I've been shouting this for 6 years to a lot of really deaf ears.
Yeah.
But I still come back to 150 years from now, they're going to look back on this time like we look at the Industrial Revolution and go, wow, that must have been painful to live through. Or, and companies came through it really, really well. Some of the wealthiest families in the world got their start during that time, and I think there's a lot of potential for that now too.
Yeah, and if you really look at the last 6 years, you've been evangelizing this, right? The economy has been party time for the economy, and party time for venture capital, and party time for just capital in general, right? Um, we're certainly seeing that switch.
Yeah,
Has the hangover totally hit everybody? Not yet, but it's going to, or it is. It's continuing to happen. It's
yeah,
manifesting in a lot of different ways. So, yeah, I see it every day. I see the pain um, starting to be felt more and more by more and more companies and more types of companies, even industrial companies and companies that aren't software companies but make physical goods and manufacturers, and all of those types of companies are seeing similar things, similar changes, and similar pain points. So, is it going to happen overnight, or is everybody going to, but certainly it's getting more and more painful every day. And the macroeconomic environments and the just, make it that much more accelerates that pain that much more, kind of pokes at the pain that much more.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is a great topic around um, a social framework, because as we move more into the pains of this, I think people need something to sink their claws into, and we're going to have one here real soon that we can share. But as Tom and I keep coming online and invite you all to join our conversations at any point in time, we'd love to hear what you're finding is working, what you find needs to be included in a complete framework or flywheel, if you will, around social as it pertains to revenue generation and predictable revenue creation, as Tom likes to emphasize in his book.
Got to make sales, and then you got to do them predictably, right? And over time. But the first thing is we just got to have a framework for getting people or for companies to actually make consistent sales, and then we can build on top of that to make that more predictable.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Well, I'll be back tomorrow with Carson on the Friday show. And then Tom and I, of course, will be back next week as we keep chatting all things social influence, revenue creation, predictable revenue creation, and, of course, the revenue zone.
The revenue zone. Long live the revenue zone.
That's
All right.
right.
Thanks, Brandon.